Welcome to the Betting Above the Rim podcast. Today's date, April 2nd, episode 137 of our podcast. And let's get started with what do you think we're going to talk about? It's Final Four weekend. The four best teams in college basketball head down to San Antonio this weekend as the Final Four will take place. And I've heard a lot of talk on social media and on television about this being not a great NCAA tournament because we didn't have the madness of upsets. Maybe not the madness of upsets, but we've had great basketball, particularly when we got to the Sweet 16 on forward and the quality of competition that we've had. And to me, the other thing that we're getting a lot of is how the NIL and the transfer portal, it's kind of ruining basketball, right? And I want to push back on this a little bit. I think what we've seen now out of these four teams, and let's be clear here, these are four outstanding teams, four teams that are all deserving of being in the Final Four. There's no Cinderella story. I mean, these are the four best teams. Think about KenPom ratings. In the last 20 years, before this year, three teams have had a KenPom net rating of 35 or higher. Folks, you have all four teams in this Final Four. Think about this for a second. Three in the previous 20 years, and all four this year. And two of them coming from arguably the best league in the country, in Auburn and Florida, out of the SEC. A team in Houston that's absolutely fantastic, well coached by Kelvin Sampson, and then John Shire of Duke and his Duke team, but has the highest net rating in the history of KenPom. So how do these teams become so great? It wasn't just the NIL and the portal. And that's why I want my focus on to be the next minute or so. It's about roster construction. You have to be able to get high-impact freshmen, understood, right? Look at even next year's class. Duke, number 1 with the Boozer twins. Houston, number 2 with Chris Sinek being the lead recruit. Auburn at number 10. Florida at number 18. These are all according to ESPN rankings for classes. But then you have to take teams and players and keep them for time to develop. Proctor. Roberts. Right? You could, I guess you can't mention so much, maybe a Janai Broom, because obviously he was a transfer. But he's someone that developed over a number of years, with obviously Bruce Pearl. Right? You got to get guys and develop them. So it's the portal, yes, and NIL with that. But it's also high-impact freshmen, and then the ability to go supplement in the portal and take your kids you got as freshmen and develop them over time. And I think that's what's important here is while we want to talk about the problems with the NIL, it's not leaving, all right? This isn't going anywhere. Transfer portal's not going anywhere, folks. I'll end up talking about after the season what I would do to fix the issues. But for now, let's make sure we enjoy the Final Four. In coaching news, Buzz Williams has taken the head coaching job at Maryland. And people are going to sit there and talk about, this isn't a sexy hire for Maryland. Let me tell you something, folks. Buzz Williams is a winner. Everywhere Buzz goes, they are better than how he left it. Now, you may look at when Tom Crane left Marquette to go to Indiana, and the fact of, well, Buzz's last year, he went 17-15. But that team before that last year made the NCAA tournament 5 times and made it to the second weekend the last 3 times he made the tournament. You want more? I got more. Goes to Virginia Tech. Not known for basketball. 11-22 year one. By the time he gets done in 2018, 2019, after 5 seasons, he's got that team in the Sweet 16. Goes to A&M, another school, football country. 16-14 year one. By the time he's done this past year, 23-11, 5th, and by far the best league in college basketball, top to bottom. A league that got 14 teams in the NCAA tournament. Buzz is a winner. Buzz is a motivator. And him going to Maryland, where I think he's going to get more of the pie with NIL and revenue sharing, is going to make this really intriguing. Got to remember, folks, he's coached at Virginia Tech, right? And he coached Marquette, Big East Coast schools, even though Marquette's in the Midwest. I still consider him, East Coast because of the Big East. And the transfer front, Olivia Miles, star guard out of Notre Dame, has foregone the WNBA draft and entered the transfer portal. And people are shocked by this. And my question to you is why? Why are you shocked that she went into the portal and not the WNBA, even though she was arguably the number 2 pick in the WNBA draft? Simply put, Evan Sidery pulled up did a pretty interesting tweet. The average salary for a rookie, and if Matt could pull it up, top 4 picks was $76,536. The top 4 women's college basketball players last year averaged 1.1 million in NIL earnings. More than that. You have to look at, in her mind, leaving Notre Dame, which has got decimated by the transfer portal. I mean, Kylie Watson just went in today. I think they're down to 5 players. She wants to be in a situation, put your heads together here, where she could be the lead guard with the ball in her hands to be an effective scoring point guard. Start doing your research, start digging, and think about power schools that had scoring first point guards that could distribute with the ball in their hand that have people graduating or transferring out. Yes, this is about what you could get in NIL. Just as much importantly, this is about putting the ball in her hands and letting her be effective. The WNBA's got to make changes to how much money these players, if they ever think they're going to get kids to leave early. Coming up next, we'll get into our awards show. We'll look at most outstanding players for the NCAA tournament for the men and women. We'll look at matchups that we possibly could see. We'll be back with our awards for. Welcome back to the Betting Above the Rim podcast, episode 137, and it's time to get into our award tour or we break down the future markets. With it being obviously Final Four weekend, I think is another chance for us to first look at the Final Four most outstanding player odds. And make sure you understand this, folks. This is just for the Final Four. This is not for the entire NCAA tournament. Cooper Flagg leads at plus 115 for the men, followed by Walter Clayton Jr. at plus 390. Janai Broome at 7-1, LJ Cryer 11-1, Milos Uzan at 13-1, Tahad Pettiford at 20-1, Colin Knipple at 30-1, along with Emmanuel Sharp, Will Richard, and Jawan Roberts at 40-1. And it's interesting to look at it because when you look and compare that to odds to win a national championship, Duke's at even money right now. Florida is at plus 290, right? Houston is at plus 420, and Auburn is at 5-1. So when you start looking at it, if you're taking a team to win a national championship, is it better to look at the most outstanding player odds because it's more even? Now, to me, with Duke, it doesn't make sense. Duke is at even money. Cooper Flagg's at plus 115. Should he win it? Should they win? Yeah, most likely. But Colin Knipple is someone that can score in bunches. And if I'm a team, especially like Houston in the semifinals, I'm not making Cooper Flagg beat me. It's got to be someone else. So to me, Duke, you're better off taking Duke at even money than Cooper Flagg at plus 115 because you could get a chance of Colin Knipple. Maybe you take Duke at even money and put a sprinkle at Colin Knipple at 30-1 just in case, Cooper doesn't win it. Let's go to Florida at plus 290, right? If you look at the board, Clayton at plus 380, right? And then you have Will Richard at 40-1. But you saw how have a really big Sweet 16 in Elite 8, right? I think at 20 points in Elite 8. So, Walter Clayton Jr., it's not even $1. Same thing. Stick with Florida because I think he gets that chance. Now, when you get to Houston, this is a far stay away. Because if you notice, the top guy for Houston is LJ Cryer at 11-1, right? But if you look at all the teams on that list, they're the only team that has 4 guys listed on the board that Matt has up, right? Cryer 11-1, Uzan 13-1, Sharp 30-1, Roberts 40-1. That's because any one of those four guys can get it. So then that means you got to go with Houston at plus 440. The only one I would think you look at taking a player over the team is Auburn. Janai Broome 7-1. Auburn's 5-1. That's $2 more for Janai Broome. Out of all the teams in the Final Four, this is the only team in Auburn that if he's not the Final Four, not the most outstanding player, they can't win. They if he's subpar, they're not going to win. Just look at Michigan State game. So to me, you take Duke at even money, you take Florida at plus 290, you take Houston at plus 420, but if you're taking Auburn, get the extra $2 and go Janai Broome 7-1. Now, really quickly too, double chance, meaning you get 2 chances of who to pick, right? Duke or Florida minus 280, Duke or Houston minus 210, Duke or Auburn minus 185, Florida or Houston plus 125, Auburn or Florida plus 140, Auburn or Houston plus 185. So I'm being of the mindset that I think Houston is going to win it. And Houston, I think the winner of Houston-Duke's going to win it. So right there at minus 210 doesn't really bode you well, right? Yeah, it's minus 2, minus 210. I don't think those are not great numbers. See if that thing comes down a little bit before we get into the Final Four, right, closer to Saturday night. 10 to the women, really quickly. Paige Bueckers, runaway, minus 165. Sarah Strong, plus 7.5. Madison Booker, 10-1. Chloe Kitts, 10-1. Lauren Betts, 12-1. Malaysia Fulwiley, 25-1. AZ Fudd, 30-1. Joyce Edwards, Sinai Fegan, and Tiana Papau. Those are 50-1. Edwards is 35-1. Simply put, UConn right now is obviously the odds-on favorite, and I think they're minus 170 because they're playing fantastic ball. Folks, don't even try it. If Paige is going to win it, if the UConn, Paige is going to win if UConn wins it. Not worth the 5 cents. So take UConn minus 170. South Carolina plus 280 is interesting because they have Chloe Kitts at 10, but to me, Malaysia Fulwiley is the X factor. Because I think if they play her enough and play her more minutes, especially for Johnson, I think that's when they're most effective team. So I would take maybe South Carolina plus 280, sprinkle on Malaysia Fulwiley at 25-1. The one that you definitely want to take the player over the team is Lauren Betts. She's 12-1, UCLA is 7.5-1. There's no chance in hell this team's winning if Lauren Betts, who's a 6'7" monster, go over her left shoulder. She's kind of like, for you guys that didn't watch basketball, women's basketball, like think about like Zach Edey. If she gets deep post position, she goes to that jump hook. It's unstoppable. It's basically you can't even double it. So look at Lauren Betts. Texas 8.5-1. Madison Bueckers an extra $1.50, but you have someone like Harmon at the point that could get it. So really quick, take UConn at minus 170 over Paige or Strong. I would do maybe plus 280 for South Carolina with a sprinkle of Fulwiley at 25-1. UCLA, I would just do Lauren Betts at 12-1. Texas, I would take 8.5-1 over Booker at 10-1. That is kind of the way I see it with this Final Four. And it's going to be an interesting Final Four on the women's side because of the impact and what Paige Bueckers' last season. Paige Bueckers was, when she came out as a freshman, took her team to the national championship game scoring 20 points and was arguably the best player in the country. Suffered through knee injuries. And now is back, not coming back for a fifth year when she had it. She's not coming back because she expects to win a national championship. And I expect UConn to do so. And if you've been paying attention to this network, I've been saying it for the better part of 2 months. Coming up next, we'll get into our scouting report. We'll preview the Final Four games of both sides. We have obviously Florida, Auburn in the men, followed by Houston versus Duke. And then I'll get into a little bit of the regional site problem I have on the women's side. We'll be back with our scouting report after this commercial break. Welcome back to the Betting Above the Rim podcast, episode 137. It's time to get into our scouting report where we preview some of the best games in basketball. We'll just stick to the Final Four. And we'll lead off with the first matchup scheduled to tip off at 6:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time out of San Antonio as the number 1 seed Florida Gators take on the number 1 seed Auburn Tigers. As of right now, line is minus 2.5 for the Gators. Minus 142 on the money line, over under at 116.5, obviously money line at plus 116 for Auburn. And when you really think about this matchup, right, you have to think about the fact that both teams in the top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency. But to me, when I look at this matchup is both teams' defense has the advantage. But the one thing I look at is the way this team has been playing. And that's been Florida. When you look at the Florida Gators, let's be honest, folks, when you have a close game, which I expect this to be, you got to rely on who has the ball in their hands. When you look at these two teams, right, you could say the advantage inside goes to Auburn because of Janai Broome. Right? I completely understand that. But when you go to the perimeter, I think it's a big advantage for Florida. Why? Walter Clayton Jr. 18.1 points per game. If he gets fouled, he's going to knock down 87% of his free throws, get you about 4.2 assists per game. And I think the front court of Hout and Condon and company can do enough with their size to slow down Janai Broome. because it's a close game, we're going money line. And I'm going to go with the team that's been the best team going into the tournament, maybe besides Duke, and that's Florida, -2.5. Game number 2. Houston-Duke. Houston 5.5-point underdog, plus 190 on the money line. Duke -235 on the money line, over under 136.5. Simply put, these are two of the slower teams in the country, right? When you think about offensive pace, when they have the ball, Duke is 347. Duke is 106, but they want to play slow, right? 360 on defense. Houston 347 on 0. Houston defense 353. The game's going to be slow. There's going to be in half court, which is the way I like it. I'm going to go with Houston plus the 5.5, under 136.5. Let's get to our buzzer beater, and there's 2 of them, and I'm really going after the women's game here. 2 things. Number 1, can we get rid of these 2 regional sites? In fact, coming up right here, pulled up by Matt, 2027, Vegas and Philly, 2028, Portland and DC. You had press conferences for like the second day of games, with the first day of games, teams celebrating the locker room, you couldn't even hear. Like, this is diminishing the women's game. As the women's game is growing, why are we doing 2 regional sites but the men get 4? It makes no sense. No one's happy. The fans aren't happy. The players aren't happy. The coaches are sure hell isn't happy. Fix it. You got to go to 4 regional sites. Please don't disrespect the women's game. And by the time we get to 2029, there needs to be 4 regional women's sites for the NCAA tournament. Let's get to the breaking news that just came out, that Corey Close was just named Naismith Coach of the Year. And I want to say this. I have so much respect for Corey Close and what she's done at UCLA. But damn it, this is highway robbery. Why? It should have went to Mark Campbell of TCU. You want proof? I got proof. Preseason ranking. UCLA number 5. TCU unranked. Ranked in their league preseason. UCLA 2 in the Big 10. TCU 4th in the Big 12. You want to talk about top 30 players in the transfer portal? 3 in the top 30. I'm sorry, in the class of 2024, I should say. 4 and 6 out of the transfer portal for UCLA. 14 was Van Lith. Simply put, love Corey Close, but this is robbery. It should have went to Mark Campbell and TCU. This has been your Betting Above the Rim podcast for April 2nd. For all things sports gambling, download the Sports Grid app. Pre-game, in-game, post-game, props, predictions, and more for the very best in the sports gambling industry. Next podcast we're going to release on Tuesday. We'll wrap up the NCAA season, get into the NBA coming up after that. For Matt and Vinny, thanks for listening. Remember, it's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Good night.